In November 2025, David Gentile reported to prison after being convicted of running a Ponzi scheme, and was subsequently pardoned by US President Donald Trump a few days later. But what is a Ponzi scheme anyway? This week we're going to tell you what a Ponzi scheme is, how you could end up setting up one of these scams completely by accident, and what are the telltale signs that you're about to be suckered into one of these scams by going back to the OG of Ponzi scams, Charles Ponzi Scheme, because this is the podcast that keeps your family safe from scams, hacks, and frauds. Remember to subscribe and upvote to help us keep your family safe from scams, hacks, and frauds. We're not going to cover the full history of Charles Ponzi. Instead, let me pitch you a business idea. We're running a business in Sydney, Australia, and we're starting to do business with a customer in Japan. We can send emails, make phone calls, or send a fax, but there are times when you need a proper handwritten signature for legal reasons, or for the Japanese a hanko stamp, which does the same thing. So we'll need to send mail. At current prices in Australian dollars, it costs $3.50 to send a letter to Japan from Sydney. I'm really keen to show respect to our Japanese partners, and I also want to encourage them to reply, so I'd like to pay the costs of their response to me. I can't just send them an Australian stamp. 1, I don't know how much postage costs in Japan, and 2, I'm pretty confident that Japan Post won't accept an Australian stamp. Luckily, there's a solution to that called the International Reply Coupon. If you go to an Australian post office, you can buy one of these for $4.80, and the post office on the other end will exchange it for stamps in that country. Enough stamps to post anywhere in the world. Japan sells these coupons too, but in Japan the cost is 180 yen. In Australian dollars that's about $1.74. In theory, if we get these coupons from Japan and bring them back to Australia, we could make a healthy profit by selling them to other companies that need to post to Japan at a price cheaper than Australia Post charges for postage. If you're wondering why we're not using the US or the UK as an example, many countries have stopped selling these coupons, including those two. However, if they receive one, they're still required under Universal Postal Union rules to accept it and change it for stamps. Charles Ponzi noticed this kind of situation in 1919. Back then, mail was the main way you communicated over distances or around the globe, so these coupons were more widely available and more widely used, but still relatively unknown. Ponzi noticed that the price of this coupon in the US was 4 times higher than in his home country of Italy. There were a couple of problems with Ponzi's scheme. The first is that he's broke. He tried the banks and they all told him no. So he went to friends, offering to double their money in 90 days. Word soon got round that Charles was offering such a high rate of return, and more people asked to invest in his scheme. Over time, he'd had enough to buy one of those banks that turned him down. So that problem was quickly handled. The second problem was cashing in the coupons. To start, Ponzi really did intend on buying these coupons overseas and selling them back to the post office in the US. Turns out you can't just exchange them for cash. You can only swap them for stamps. Selling these stamps is time he could spend getting more investors into his scheme. Come to think of it, so is getting all these coupons and storing them. Ponzi's first investment round involved 18 investors. Their investment would have bought 53,000 coupons. This is almost twice as many coupons that were in circulation worldwide. His next round had 15,000 investors. Charles would need to charter entire ocean liners to get that many coupons from Italy. His scheme was literally a victim of its own success. The scheme shifted focus. Ponzi still took in new investment and still made big promises about the returns available from his scheme. So how did he keep it running? Well, before Ponzi, these schemes were known as Peter and Paul schemes, as in the phrase robbing Peter to pay Paul. If you asked for your money back, he'd give it to you, along with the investment gains you were supposed to have received. As long as the money kept coming in, and at its peak he was taking $250,000 a day, and not too many people ask for their money back, you survive another day. But eventually, one of two things has to happen. Either you run with the money or the scheme collapses. Eventually, governments, reporters, and even the post office circled and discovered the whole thing was impossible. He'd sold almost 6,000 times the number of reply coupons that were in circulation. Although he tried to placate the crowds demanding their money back, and had some success at this, eventually the weight of all this got too much, and the scheme collapsed in August of 1920. He had losses to his creditors of $20 million US, or $314 million when adjusted for inflation. His investors got back less than a third of what they pledged. Justice came for Ponzi. He was charged with 86 counts of mail fraud. Pled guilty to only a single count and was imprisoned for 5 years, serving 3.5 of them. However, the courts weren't done with Ponzi. The state of Massachusetts then indicted him on 22 charges of larceny. He would eventually be deported in 1937, where he spent out his remaining years in Brazil, mainly in poverty. Ponzi schemes are almost unique amongst scams in that the scammer themselves can be their own victim. Ponzi may very well have set out with good intentions. He may have intended to buy these coupons, cash them in, and pay his investors, and let's assume for the sake of argument that this was his intention to begin with. When it became clear to Charles that he was in over his head, he couldn't exactly return his investors' money, as they were expecting big gains and Ponzi had spent much of it on himself. He was in a trap of his own making, and taking more investment to pay off the initial investors would seemingly buy more breathing space, but it can never actually solve the problem. As my parents told me, and hopefully yours told you, honesty is the best policy. Would Ponzi have been embarrassed if he'd failed at that point? Yes, absolutely. Would he have lost a friend or two? Probably. But at the end of the day, it would have just been a bad investment. It's taking that next step, even in desperation, that turned it into a scam. If it had just stopped digging, nobody would even know the word Ponzi today. This is an example of the sunk cost fallacy, where you keep putting time, money, and resources into something that isn't working in the hope that it will work, because you don't want to lose what you've already put in. It can apply to both those who find themselves in Ponzi's position, as well as actual victims of scams. Many of our episodes, including one where chasing losses ended up sinking the bank a scam victim was working for, have had people fall into this trap. It's really important when making decisions, whether it's to continue something or make a new investment, to take time out to really think about it. If someone is trying to rush you into a decision, it's probably because they don't want you to think about it. Nobody can offer returns like doubling your money in 90 days consistently. It might be possible as a one-off long-shot bet, like if your horse came in at the races, but day in, day out, no. As it becomes clearer there is money to be made in that way, the sheer interest would cause returns to drop. However, the most important lesson I want to leave you with today is that if you don't understand what you're putting your money into, don't. This might mean you miss out on some big deals, but it's better to miss that than lose the lot. Even billionaire investor Warren Buffett avoids investing in many technology businesses because he doesn't understand them and therefore can't tell how risky it is. He may have missed out on the tech boom in the 90s, but he also missed out on the dot-com bubble collapsing. In our next episode, we're going to talk in detail about David Gentile's Ponzi scheme and show you what these schemes look like in the modern world. But for now, remember to like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Scams, Hacks and Frauds. This podcast is available to reuse for free under the Creative Commons with Attribution Share Alike license. The music is not included in this license. For more information on the Creative Commons license, please visit creativecommons.org.